when restaurants reopen, and you everyone's busy again, you've got, front of house and back of house interaction, you almost have to like separate the two because, one leads into the other. Then you've got a COVID positive customer, like tier one, from a customer coming in will then take out the whole business.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are speaking to a business owner who is going through something I guess a lot of hospitality business owners have gone through, and we can only imagine that a lot more are going to go through it in the future as we open up. His name is Mike Russell. He owns one of my absolute favourite bakeries in the world, Baker Bleu. Mike, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time to chat.
Oh, well, thank you for taking the time to chat, because I suppose in some ways you've got time, but in another sense...
I have a lot of time now. This is like, it's really eerie. We've been open 5 years, and it feels really weird on a Saturday for both bakeries to be closed and to be at home. And I can't imagine how all of the staff feel. It hurts. Like my wife and I, Mia and I, it's really weird, and it's kind of like, it's really sad, but, I really feel bad for all of our staff as well.
Yeah. So just to put everyone in the picture, you've had a staff member test positive, and that's sort of turned into a bit of a situation, but put us in the picture. What's been happening at Baker Bleu over the last week?
So, over the last week, we, just prior to all of this, we'd been actively, had a little bit of a scheme going with trying to get all of the staff vaccinated, all the full-timers, all the full-time production staff, and drivers vaccinated. And we had a $250 scheme for, if you were double vaccinated by the end of November, you choose a voucher of your choice, like JB Hi-Fi, Amazon, whatever you would like. And that was kind of that. We thought that would spur on a lot of the young guys to go and get vaccinated, and it was working. We actually had everyone with their first shot, and a couple of people were double vaxxed. We had one of the young guys who had his Pfizer shot on the Friday, and he felt a little bit unwell on Sunday. We said, look, you should go home, take the day off on Monday, but you should also go and get tested as well. And he got a positive result on Tuesday morning. He sent it straight through to all of the sort of operations, the leadership team at the bakery. And that's when action stations, we were like, wow, this is big. We had like a quick 1 minute meeting, and we decided to alert all the production staff immediately and said, you guys should go and get tested and go home. We'll be in touch with you really shortly. And from that moment on, we closed the store as well, and alerted all the front of house in Caulfield. And then we went about doing that with the other store as well. We were straight on the phone to DHHS, Department of Health, and went through all the prompts on the phone, and were on hold for quite a long time and tried a few different numbers. And I think once we were even hung up on, and then we went about doing all the paperwork with the Department of Health, employer notification that we had a case, and also WorkSafe Victoria, and that was all done by sort of 11 a.m. And then we kind of like, where do we begin? So we started talking to our sort of, compatriots and other hospitality businesses about their experiences and what to do. And we thought, we've got to get this place deep cleaned immediately. And we did first the Caulfield Bakery, and then we did Hawkesburn the next day. So we've done all that, and, we're kind of waiting. We thought, we'd be in touch with someone, and, the paperwork's in. We kept trying to call. We felt really powerless, and we still feel powerless. And, eventually, we did receive a listing, and that was the details that they've got on there are incorrect. It's kind of, it all feels really weird and disappointing as well.
Well, it must be, especially in those early hours, like such an incredibly stressful period. I know having, you know, visited the bakery numerous times, that you guys take COVID safety super seriously. Like, the systems are incredible. There's really rigorous QR check-in, only 2 people allowed in at a time. You know, it's very, I felt very safe. But of course, you know, no one can, these things aren't watertight. You know, obviously it's a virus, anyone can get it, and through no fault of their own, of course. But I think, you know, that it sounds like, yeah, I can, just from having that front of house experience, I can imagine that your back of house systems are really rock solid as well. And it sounds like, so all that paperwork you're talking about, that's basically your COVID safe plan that you've sort of enacted in the moment. You've sort of done everything through that process. But it sounds like what you're saying is that you were doing your part of, you know, the due diligence, but you felt like the government systems weren't sort of meeting you halfway and doing their part of it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, you know, we like straight away we were like, okay, and only you know, through this whole this 18-month period of this pandemic, it's been like ever changing and evolving, and wanting to do the right thing, because it's a privilege to be open. I think that's the biggest thing that I always reminded everyone, like, guys, we need to take this seriously. There are so many businesses closed, and we're an essential business and we're open. So we need to really, you know, take that seriously. So, you know, that's, you know, the way we interact with customers, the way we interact with each other. You know, in the beginning of this, it was so difficult. Last year in March 2020, like, we went to 2 teams of bakers in front of house. That was so difficult. We had 60 staff members then. And we thought, you know, that was super difficult. And, you know, in the end, it was just untenable, because we had to put some staff members on reduced hours. And then because, you know, they were used to having a certain amount of income if they were casual, then they started working, you know, kind of under the radar at for another employer. And so we just felt like if we were trying to do the right thing, but, you know, we couldn't, the trust wasn't there, we had to scrap it, because it was too much hard work. We didn't have the staff. It was, you know, the changeover in between shifts, like we were doing COVID safe wipe down in between. You'd have 3 days on for one crew and then 4 days for the next crew. And, you know, this is when we were all learning about everything. This is before the QR codes. You know, back then, that was when it was all about just keep the 1.5 meter, you know, spacing, and, you know, 2 people in the store at any one time. Like, it was quite early on. And as it's evolved through this whole period of the pandemic, we've always wanted to keep abreast of all that. You know, what should we be doing? What can we try? You know, the way we, you know, even with the timesheet app that we use, Deputy, there's the contact tracing, so you could see who's worked with what person, you know, at any one particular time, and where has that person sat amongst other shifts. So, you know, when we had this, we immediately looked at all of it. We submitted all the paperwork to the Department of Health. But in the meantime, because we had no contact, we were like, well, you know, we're all at home. Our operations team are at home. We're using WhatsApp to communicate with each other. We've got, you know, a couple of the guys calling around, production managers calling around to the production team to see how they are. Our the 50 employees have been tested twice at this stage, and we're asking them to go and get tested on day 7 on Monday. For the 3rd time. So all of our front of house have tested negative once again. So we're kind of doing our own contact tracing and sort of mitigation internally.
Which is great, but I don't think that's how the system's supposed to work. But tell us, Mike, like, what's happened back of house? Like, how many staff members have tested positive now, and what has your in-house contact tracing shown you?
Yeah, so we've had, from one case, we've had 7 test positive now.
Wow.
Which, you know, and wow, right? I didn't, you know, I always knew that it would come about. Like, you know, a couple of months ago or a month ago, we had some cases locally in supermarkets, and supermarkets were tier 1s, and I was like, wow, I've got to stop going to supermarkets. And myself, there was a period where I wasn't going to the bakery during operation hours, because it could be a customer customer that could check in, and then we'd be a tier one, and then I'd have to isolate all my staff, and then therefore the bakery would shut down from one customer interaction. So I was being really precautious with staff right now. With the 7 confirmed cases that we have, the way that the analysis that we've done and how it's come about is pretty simplified, but then there's also a couple of weird ones. So we've got 3 young guys who live together. They're all COVID positive. And then, and then it started with that initial young guy, and they had all received their first vaccine. And then the other ones were, we've got a young couple, Korean couple. They, Emma, who works at the bakery, she, her partner lost his job. And so he, during, the shutdown, and he was doing a bit of casual work at the bakery as well. And so they were 2 positive cases. And then the other one was a weird one where it was the interaction had been quite low, but still there was another positive case. And then later on, one of the other guys tested positive. So some of the interaction was obviously high because these guys lived together, but then the other interactions were kind of few and far between. And you could see that there were other people that have tested negative twice over, where you could say, look, the interaction was much higher on the production area, but yet they've tested negative.
Well, I mean, I guess that's why, well, it's not why, but I mean, they do ask people to isolate for 14 days because people can test positive, right towards the end of that period. So I suppose those people, hopefully are going to keep testing negative, but you just don't know. Absolutely.
And so that's within our business, we've got plus 20 that, for 14 days, plus 20 employees for 14 days that, they're going to have to isolate at home. And that's been, because we've done that, that tracing, that's, through the CCTV and through looking at the roster and the contact tracing that we've got in that rostering system, that we're instructing those kids to stay home.
I mean, if the whole baking thing doesn't work out, mate, you can, sounds like you could get a job as COVID commander.
Yeah, well, no, it's fine. Down to, my wife, Mia, and also Lily and Esther and JP, and Ellie, that all the guys that work at the bakery, that's all due to their work and the communication. It's constant communication to see if everyone's okay, because the bakery is still together as one team, but we're all apart. And it's so that checking in, to say, like, how are you guys doing? Do you need anything? Like, have you been tested? Have you received that second result back? Even one of the guys one of the last individuals that tested positive, he was waiting 3 days for his results from the Alfred, and they went missing. So he went and got retested. And then it turned out to be he was the last positive case we had, but his first test results went missing. Which is like, and that was we were like, wow, like, this has been too long. You've got to go out and get tested again. So it's the constant, I think that's where all the hard work is, the constant checking in with everyone. We're our own little internal sort of like, health department information service or whatever for all of the staff, because everyone's, and then everyone's wanting to know, even those people that feel like they can be, that, they said, look, you didn't have it, you weren't on the shift on that particular day, you haven't had any interaction with anyone else. A lot of people, because, there's that community stigma out there as well that, oh, you work at Baker Bleu, I don't want to be seen by anyone for 14 days on the street, you know what I mean? And all of their family. So there's a lot of that, because there's not much clarity out there on say to see Baker Bleu is, tier 1 or whatever. They're like, oh, you work for Baker Bleu, you shouldn't be out and about. Do you know what I mean? So, and then on top of all that, it's the customer contact as well. So the amount of customer contact, like 99% of it positive, because we've been transparent and about all the details. Just to be clear, like right now on DHHS website exposure list, they've listed us for like 1 day. And we've put even more information up on our Instagram account than what's on the government website. and that's I feel is the sad part about all of this, because they're so overwhelmed, and people wanting more knowledge. So it's two things that we're doing, like interacting with all of our staff and also interacting with customers who are worried, and also our wholesale customers. Thank God at this stage, both front facing and wholesale facing, they're all negative twice over.
Yeah, it's yeah, I, I just don't even know what to say. It's just such a huge thing that you're going through, and I guess without the sort of the system holding your hand, from a safe distance through this process, it just it just adds a layer of difficulty and frustration. It does sound like a really different experience that you're having now, late September, October, when the cases are so high, than the experience that we talked about on the podcast in June with Miss Frankie, the Cremorne restaurant that was, really at the hub of a big outbreak. And I think when cases were just, in the teens and 20s and 30s, they felt that they were really, their hands were really held through that process. The COVID commander even called them to check that everything was okay. It just sounds like things are completely at a different scale now, which I suppose, in one sense, well, you can understand it is just people doing these jobs, and they need to have training and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, you just think, well, didn't we know that this was going to happen and this was going to be necessary? It's and then there are small businesses like yourselves with all these people that you want to look after, and the business's reputation and all the customers that rely and adore what you do. It's a lot for you to be carrying, Mike.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're trying to look at it like immediately after it happened. We straight away we went to the positives, and we just thought, what, it's been grueling because we've been open. We even open at Christmas time. Like a lot of bakeries start on Christmas Day. We even open on Christmas Day, and we've been super busy, and we've been super fortunate to be open during this whole period of when a lot of businesses have been closed. We've gone the other way. Like we've ramped up production. Doing all sorts of things like pizza and just to kind of get everyone through and do different add-on menu items. And so it's been really exhausting, and straight away I was thought, what, this is a good break for everyone, because we've got a lot of internationals that they're kind of like, why should I take leave when I can't go anywhere, when I can't go home? And I thought, what, we've got to look at it in the light that sort of this is just a little bit of a rest for everyone, because I think a lot of people have needed it. I've needed it. All of the management have needed it, and that's, I think, the best way you can look at it. Just to do all of the maintenance and a deep clean, and everyone just have a break, I think is the biggest thing. But at the same time, like I feel like day 2, day 3 into it, and not much sort of support coming back. It's understandable because, as you said, like the cases are so high. But I think that you got to kind of if you've got like a business with 2 storefronts and 50 employees, like at the same time as everyone having a break and being at home, there's also a little bit of stress there because they don't know what's going on.
Mike, I know you've also looked at this as an opportunity to think about how you're going to reopen and what you're going to do, how you're going to change things, especially in this new environment where we're going to be open and inevitably there will be more cases. So tell us about some of those thoughts.
Look, again, like I think the last question we was talking about, like I said, you got to look at it every sort of crisis or adversity. You got to kind of look at the positives. I think, this has taught us lessons about how we come back. Not only for just securing the business and securing the safety of customers and staff. We've kind of like straight away we've seen things by reviewing CCTV and reviewing interactions, and I think it's like really it's a shock that going forward, I think many I'm sure a lot of larger businesses already do this by, securing food handling business already do this. But, by looking at all the footage, there's the spacing that you've got to have within the store for your your retail environment for your customers. And you've got to bring those same rules into your work environment. Like we had last year, we had the spacing of, only having 2 people at a workbench at any one time. But then, I feel like it's really sad, but we've got to, in this day and age, to prevent any transmission, we've got to do things like removing the break room, and having a break room outdoors, or asking people to leave the actual premises, and go outside during their break, because it's where a lot of sort of close contact occurs when people are relaxed and resting and having a meal or sharing a meal together. Only recently, we'd said, for efficiencies and for spacing, we'd said, only one staff member could be in the break room at any one time. But then, you've got other people finishing shifts and, collecting their personal goods and then going home at the end of the day while someone else was having, say, a lunch break, and then they will both be off guard and have, the contact would be too close. We really saw that was a big opportunity and put a lot of doubt in our eyes for people to be close contacts of other people's of other people in the production area. So I feel like going forward we have to really be strict with the way we manage internal contact within the employees and the business, because it just it's going to lead to this happening again. And with restaurants, I've said to a couple of people that we talk to in hospitality and in Melbourne, from after reviewing all this, is wow, when restaurants reopen, and you everyone's busy again, you've got front of house and back of house interaction, you almost have to separate the two, because one leads into the other. Then you've got a COVID positive customer, tier one, from a customer coming in will then take out the whole business. And is there any sort of backup that you can have on that? Can you separate out your teams of production? Can you separate the kitchen? How do they interact after hours in the break room? All of these things have to be questioned for to give you a bit of security that what do you do about staff meal? You've got, basically, if you have a staff meal, then every single person that was there sitting down for that staff meal, if you're honest about how you do things, then you should say they're all done, they're all finished, they're all isolated, they're all close contacts, and you have to reset with no one. And that's what's happened to us right now. I mean, I have myself and maybe 3 other people that we can reopen production with in the next 2 weeks, which is based on the production that we were previously doing, that's 10% of what we can do. We had 20 plus people in production. So, and that's the lesson that I've learned, that there needs to be a lot of segregation and a lot of, I guess, big, hard changes that need to happen, i.e. the break room, going forward. Otherwise, you're really putting yourself at risk. It's sad to say, It
is sad to say. It's really makes my heart sink to think about those, that beautiful contact, that social contact that's such a part of hospitality, and makes it, fun for people to be there. That these are the kinds of things that you have to say no to, at least for a while. But I guess, the whole thing in the construction industry, they did, if you think about break rooms as the tea rooms of hospo, then it's certainly been an environment that's been identified as likely to cause spread if someone is infected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's hard because, so many every business really is running so lean in terms of staff. People don't really,
and that's something that we've really in and out of lockdown last year, when we kind of had a really nice summer here, where it was, it was relatively normal, as close to normal can get. And we had the amount of staff that kind of went back to their previous hospitality jobs. Everyone was fighting for staff. And so we know what that's like. We've had to kind of rebuild our team a couple of times. it's going to be really difficult for staff retention, and these are all the challenges, that we've got to face.
I mean, you were obviously really proactive with vaccination, but it is big news in Victoria at the moment, and I'm sure other states will follow in whatever way, just in terms of mandating a first and then a second vaccine for people who are classified as authorised workers, and that includes people in food production and in hospo. What do you think about that? Do you think that gives businesses a level of comfort, or do you think it's too heavy-handed? Like, what do you think?
Look, immediately, I remember when I first thought, what, for the business, I need to be, one, doing the right thing for customers, and I need to be doing the right thing for food service customers, and by giving them a level of assurance. And I think that the greyness of it is for perspective, I think is, really is worrying. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go and get a vaccine myself, and then I'll lead the way by saying to everyone, within the business, I went and got it because that's the right thing. That's where I started. At that point, being under 40, the only one that was available to me in Victoria was AstraZeneca. But I was like, you know what, that's what I'm going to get. And I remember when I went and got one, they were like, oh, we'd rather you wait for Pfizer. There was so much, there was not a lot of clarity there within, the state or federal government, but, that was what was available. So I went and got it. And obviously the first thing I did is I went and told everyone, all the, staff about it at the bakery. And then Mia, my wife, and I together thought, you know what, like, there is a big risk here with us. The fact that we have so many people coming to the bakery, retail-wise, every day. We've got so many employees coming. We're a food business. We're allowed to be open as an essential service. So we need to, following that, sort of privilege, we've got to go and get vaccinated also. And that's the logic that we put behind it. If you've got that privilege to be operating and producing food, then, following that, comes the vaccine, the absolute certainty on getting that. And so then we went about, saying, a lot of the staff members, the employees at the bakery, they're under 20. And we thought, what's the best way? Can we do it through money, or can we do it, let's do it with a voucher, because it's $200, $250 tax-free, and they can choose whatever voucher they want. And we started it that way. But there was still, I got to say, a lot of hesitancy, because a lot of kids were like, oh, I'm waiting for Pfizer. And we had to kind of hold their hand, like, where you at? Like, what do you want to talk to us about it? Do you want us to help you, find out how to get it? Like, how can we help you in any way? And that wasn't just me or Mia. That was also, other people within the business that sort of made themselves available to check in once a week with everyone. It took quite a while, I must say, because there was a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable. The rollout has been such a schmozzle that it's understandable that there was so much uncertainty. And, I've had a lot of those conversations with people in my circles as well. And it is really it's real hard one-on-one work to help people through those thought processes when there is so much noise out there. I mean, given all that, and I mean, you're ahead of it, but I mean, do you think that for businesses to then say, well, actually you need, or not for businesses to say, the government said, if you want that job, then you need to get that jab. Like, do you think that makes it a bit easier for people to just, decide which side they line up on?
Yeah, I think this whole pandemic has really, there's so much fear there's so many elements of fear within this whole pandemic that have been represented or cultivated by media, as far as just the constant media cycle of talking about COVID, whether it's how the virus is spread or what the vaccine can do. And I find it really reassuring to go and talk to a doctor or something like that. If they're just a friend. In Caulfield, a lot of our customers, work in the health service, and they put really good perspective on things like this. That we've actually been doing this for such a long time, and this is just another element of it. Whether it's vaccine passport when you traveled when you were younger, whether you go to South America or Africa, or the I think there's just a real fear factor that's been cultivated through all of this. And that kind of slides into the whole anti-vax thing. So I just think, it's really good to put perspective on things. We've actually been doing this for a long time, and it's not about, it's the same. I think the travel thing's a really great example. If you were younger and you ever traveled from Australia to South America or Africa, that was kind of like, well, if you'd like to visit there, this is what you've got to do.
Yeah, there was absolutely no heat in that question at all. It was just like, get your ticket, get your backpack, get your jab.
Yeah, I really want to go to Argentina or something. So, or Africa, or so. Like, this is what I've got to do for that. For like a tetanus shot or whatever it was, like getting an injection. Like there's measles. Like it's just like they go together really nicely when it's about travel, but then when it's about like the job. And jab thing, then it's a lot more heated. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are lots of industries where vaccinations of one sort or another have been mandatory, whether it's particular types of doctors or meat workers. I mean, it's kindergartners. Like it's not that radical.
Yeah, I've said to all the guys, look, we're an essential business, and so. And we've been operating the whole time as normal. Like, there've been so many people that have been having to stay at home during, lockdown after lockdown. And yet we've been able to have the privilege to, it's not a normal life at the moment for anyone, but, relatively have a normal life by coming to work every day. And so that privilege, I think, always, boils down to like, what's related to that privilege, having a vaccine so you can have a safe workspace and therefore create a safe space to bake a product for a customer base. So that's the way I've always explained it to everyone in the team.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that there's a lot of COVID talk around. It is rather hard to avoid, especially when you're an exposure site. But can we just talk a little bit about bread?
Okay.
I love your bread so much. And I mean, it's when we get it, we get it quite a bit. But sometimes if I go to the bakery and just, have to get this and then it's that and then, that looks good and get that and just get this massive bag and then eat half the baguette on the way home, as I'm sure everybody does. But just tell me what you try to achieve with the bread that you bake there.
Look, with I think, we're, as the business has grown, we've always, we started it in 2016, at the end of 2016, which seems like such a long time ago now, but wasn't that long ago. We're a relatively young business, but we've grown quite rapidly, and I think that boils down to like just respecting the process and sticking to what you're good at. That's always been a thing where. As you open a business and you start baking, you potentially growing the product line too quickly. We've always tried to simplify and respect the process and just stick to what we're good at. And that's honing in on all the things that make the bread amazing, whether it's that crust, or the flavor profile through like that super long fermentation. When we went from our first little site and to a larger site, we wanted to, instead of just saying, look, we want to bake more, which we were able to do, we wanted to like, how can we stretch out that process even more, that resting fermentation process even more and bake even later? As we started to do more volume in our original space, like that fermentation process got shorter because we were baking more in that site. Whereas in this new site, we were able to stretch it out even more and have the bake time even later. So, the customers were getting something that, didn't have like a 12-hour fermentation resting process on it. It had like an 18-hour, like resting process with the bake time of like, if we opened the store at 7:30, it came out of the oven at, 6 or 7 a.m. So we've always tried to respect the process and keep it simple. Keep it simple by not having a huge product line, Really just, each loaf has to be, that's the thing I'm instilling into everyone, having that care across every, element of the process, being absolutely spot on with your mixing and the proving process, and getting that amazing quality crust and color in the bread every day. It's not a hard thing. We bake really dark. We bake a lot darker than a lot of other bakeries, but there is burnt, and then there's that beautiful like dark deep brown that you want to get, and that's what we, with every loaf, even though we're baking so much more than we were before, still chasing that on every single one, because that's what it's all about. We don't do donuts and cakes and all that sort of stuff that maybe a lot of other bakeries do. We try and specialize in bread, and so if you do that, you want to make it amazing. So because that's how someone's going to take it home and enjoy it, and really feel that they've got something special. I think that's the thing that we try and focus on.
It is special, and it is very distinctive with that dark crust, which I've seen some interesting conversations on your Instagram over the years with people who...
Yeah, I like seeing the comments saying, no, it's burnt. Why do they keep burning their bread? Look, it's not for everyone, but once you and I understand that there's a lot of amazing bakeries out there, and we do bake darker than, and there's a lot of people who say it's burnt, and you know what, it's not for them, and there's a lot of other bakeries out there, and that's okay. But the people that love that dark crust, we've got what they're after.
I love it, because to me it's really you pushing it right to the edge, and you can taste and you can see the respect for process as you talk about, and just showcasing the taste of the flour. It's very, there's so much honor, I think, in what you do, but then there's this real daredevil, how far can we take it? And yes, I mean, I love it. To me, it's really honest bread, but it's also got that little bit of daring, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I call it with all of the bread we do, we do a really large format, rounds of, wheels, 36 rolls in a wheel, and we do a really big 2 kilo loaf. These are things that we do every day, and they've got a they're a lot darker than other bread that you might see. I call it it's exaggerated and it's extreme, as far as bread goes. It's not a little 600 gram pale little tin loaf. It's big, it's dark, it's crunchy. When you cut into it at home, I love some of our older customers. They say, oh, we really love your bread, but it makes too much of a mess at home, because when you slice into it, the crust goes everywhere.
It's so true. But it's even in the car, I'm sure I could probably make a baguette out of all the crumbs in my car, because you break off that bit and it just shatters, and oh my goodness, it's so awesome.
Well, it's nice. It's food. It's real. It's not nice and neat.
It's not apologetic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I can't wait for you guys to be back there baking again, even if it's reduced capacity.
No, we can't either. We're looking forward to the reopening.
Yeah. And also, I'd just love to give you a shout out for supplying bread to the Attica Soup Project last year for all those long months, and it always made us feel so happy to give such beautiful bread, such sustaining food to the visa holders that came along and picked up some soup from us. So thank you so much for supporting that project.
Oh, no, that was a privilege. Thank you.
All right. Well, yeah. And thanks for sharing your story. It's a big one. You're not going to be the only business going through this. I'm sorry that it's been so frustrating, but I also massive shout out for how beautifully you've dealt with it, and all the comms that I've seen have been so community centered and so caring that I think customers are going to really even feel more in love with you, and come and get whatever bread they can.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I think it's super important that we've been, with so little, information out there that we've been as, transparent as possible with our customers, because, if you don't have customers, you don't have anything, you know what I mean? So you've got to keep your customers happy and safe and all the rest. So yeah, but we really appreciate you having us on, and it's good to chat during this quiet time in our life.
Yep. All right. Well, take care. Can't wait to see you back out there.
You too. Thanks, Dani.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This